let's dive deep into Good Will Hunting.
Sounds good.
This film, I mean, who doesn't love it for just the raw emotion and how sharp it is?
Right.
You sent over some seriously in-depth analysis, and I got to admit, I'm ready to see this movie in a whole new light after reading it.
Yeah.
This isn't just some guy meets therapist, kind of cliche story.
Yeah.
This is about unlocking potential, facing deep-seated fears, and how sometimes brilliance hides behind just a wall of self-sabotage.
It's really fascinating how the film dives into what we in psychology call defense mechanisms.
Ah, okay.
Will, the main character, this troubled genius, he isn't just being difficult.
Yes.
He's exhibiting classic signs of someone who's just terrified of vulnerability.
Wow.
He pushes people away before they can abandon him.
Oh, I see.
Which is right out of the textbook for someone with his history of abuse.
I always felt that tension between Will's just raw talent
Mm-hmm.
and the way he practically throws it away.
Right.
But hearing you say defense mechanism, it kind of clicks.
Yep.
It's not just bad decisions.
Yeah.
It's almost like a calculated way to protect himself,
Exactly.
which makes his outbursts and that Southie tough guy persona even more heartbreaking. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why the relationship with his therapist, Dr. Sean, is so crucial.
Right.
Sean doesn't just analyze Will from a distance.
Right.
He meets him where he's at, emotionally speaking.
Yeah.
Think back to that scene where Sean shares about his own wife passing away, something so deeply personal.
Yeah.
It's not textbook therapy, it's shared humanity.
Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The analysis that you sent points out that for Will, whose intellect is off the charts, that moment with Sean is like a foreign language.
Yes.
Will is used to just dissecting problems.
Yeah.
But Sean's showing him that emotional intelligence, it's a different ballgame altogether.
Totally.
It's not about the facts. It's about experiencing life, even the messy parts.
What's so fascinating is that Sean isn't this perfectly healed guru, you
Right.
know? He's grappling with his own grief, his own past.
Right.
The analysis calls this a two-way street of healing.
I like that.
So it's not just the therapist fixing the patient. They're both growing through this incredibly raw connection.
It's like that scene in the park where Sean tells Will, "You've never looked at a woman and been totally vulnerable."
Right.
Will can quote poetry, but real-world experience, it terrifies him.
Mm-hmm.
And this brings us to Skylar, right? I mean, she's not just a love interest. She throws a wrench into Will's carefully constructed world.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Skylar represents everything Will thinks he can't have.
Oh, interesting.
Genuine love, a futures outside of South Boston.
Yeah.
She challenges his intellect, yes, but also his emotional depth in a way his buddies can't.
And that tension between Will's Southie roots and the academic world that he's dipping his toe into,
Mm-hmm.
that's pure Boston, isn't it?
Yeah,
The film doesn't just use the city as a backdrop.
right.
It's woven into their identities.
What's brilliant is how the film visually reinforces this.
Oh, okay. Notice those scenes where Will's alone, often in dimly lit rooms or against these vast, empty spaces?
Right.
It's a visual metaphor for his isolation.
Oh, wow.
But when he's with his friends, the camera closes in, capturing that warmth and camaraderie.
Okay, so we've got Will battling his past, a therapist who's also on a journey, and a woman who makes him confront what he truly wants. Plus, Boston itself mirroring his internal struggle. No wonder this movie hits us so hard.
And we haven't even touched on the powerful symbolism of water yet.
Oh, right.
That'll be a deep dive all on its own.
Yeah.
But before we get there, what stands out to you so far? What's hitting differently now that we're looking at it through this analytical lens?
You know, for me, it's the layers of meaning in these, seemingly simple scenes.
Yeah.
Remember when Will breaks down in Sean's office?
Mhm.
It's not just a release of emotion.
Right.
The analysis points out that the office overlooks a lake.
Right.
You know, a classic symbol of cleansing and renewal.
So it's like even the setting is working on a subconscious level.
Exactly. The filmmakers are playing with our expectations.
Right.
We think we're watching this guy solve math problems.
Right.
But it's so much deeper than that.
Right.
It's about confronting those internal demons.
Yeah.
And the water imagery keeps popping up to reflect that process.
Okay. So we have the lake representing emotional release.
Right.
But then there's that scene with Will and Skylar swimming in the ocean.
Yes.
It's pure joy. Right. How does that fit into the water symbolism?
It's a shift from cleansing to liberation.
Okay.
If the lake is about washing away the past, The ocean represents this vast, unknown future that Will's finally open to.
Ah, okay.
Remember, he's been literally and metaphorically stuck in South Boston.
Right.
Now he's diving into something much bigger than himself.
Which ties back to the theme of class and social mobility that we touched on earlier.
Yes.
Will, with his, genius-level intellect,
Right.
he could thrive in any environment, but he's held back by his own perception of where he belongs.
Right.
It's like he's afraid to leave his friends behind,
Right.
to become something more than what he thinks a Southie guy should be.
And the film doesn't shy away from the complexities of that struggle.
Right.
The analysis calls it Will's internal duality.
I see.
He's this brilliant mind navigating a world that wants to put him in a box.
Right.
Either the Southie tough guy or the prodigal math genius.
Right.
He has to break free of both to truly find himself.
It's like that scene where he's working on a complex math problem while staring at his reflection in a puddle.
Right.
It's subtle,
Yeah.
but it's as if the water is reflecting his own internal conflict,
Yes.
his struggle to reconcile his intellectual gifts with his working class identity.
That's a brilliant observation.
Oh, thanks.
And it speaks to the film's subtle but powerful social commentary.
Hmm.
Will's brilliance isn't celebrated by everyone. Some people are threatened by it, especially those in academia who represent the elite world he's hesitant to enter.
Which makes his relationship with Sean even more vital.
Absolutely.
Sean isn't intimidated by Will's intelligence.
Right.
He sees the emotional vulnerability beneath the surface.
Yes.
And encourages him to embrace his full potential, regardless of social expectations.
And that brings us to another fascinating layer of the film, the role of friendship.
Right.
Will's buddies, especially Chucky, they aren't just comic relief.
Right. Yeah.
They represent the loyalty and support system that he desperately needs.
They ground him, remind him of where he comes from, and offer a sense of belonging that he doesn't find in the academic world.
Right.
Think about that scene where Chucky tells Will he hopes to one day show up at his house and find him gone,
Yeah.
having taken a chance on a better life.
Right.
Heartbreaking, but also incredibly selfless.
It speaks to the paradoxical nature of true friendship. Sometimes supporting someone means letting them go. Chucky recognizes that Will's potential extends far beyond their South Boston bubble.
Yeah.
And he's willing to sacrifice their constant companionship for Will's greater good.
It's a level of maturity that we don't always see in male friendships on screen.
Right.
It would have been easy to make Chucky resentful of Will's gifts,
Yeah.
but instead he becomes this unexpected source of strength and encouragement.
Which highlights another key theme, the transformative power of human connection.
Okay.
It's not just Sean's therapy that pushes Will forward.
Yeah.
It's the combination of Sean's guidance, Skylar's challenge, and the unwavering support of his friends.
It's like each relationship plays a specific role in chipping away at those defense mechanisms we talk about.
Yes.
Sean helps him confront his past, Skylar pushes him to be more emotionally honest, and his friends offer a sense of belonging that allows him to be vulnerable without fear of judgment.
And that's what makes the film so powerful and ultimately hopeful.
Yeah.
It suggests that healing and growth aren't solitary pursuits. They require a network of support, a community of people who believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself.
It's a reminder that we all need people in our lives who challenge us, support us, and push us to be our best selves.
Absolutely.
But what I find really interesting is that Good Will Hunting doesn't shy away from depicting the imperfections and complexities within these relationships.
Absolutely. There are arguments, misunderstandings, and moments of frustration.
Right.
But the film doesn't gloss over those rough edges.
Right.
It portrays those relationships with an honesty that makes them feel real and relatable.
It's like the film is saying that true connection isn't about perfection.
Yes.
It's about acceptance, forgiveness, and the willingness
Yeah.
to work through challenges together.
And that's a powerful message, isn't it?
Yeah.
It reminds us that even the most loving relationships require effort and compromise.
Right.
That navigating differences and conflicts is part of what makes those bonds stronger.
It's a message that resonates deeply, especially in a world where we're often bombarded with unrealistic portrayals of perfect relationships and instant happily ever afters.
And it speaks to the film's overall authenticity.
Yeah.
Its willingness to delve into the messy realities of human connection without sacrificing its ultimately hopeful message.
Thinking about those messy realities, it's amazing how the film manages to balance those darker moments with a sense of optimism.
Right.
Despite all the trauma, the self-sabotage, and the systemic challenges Will faces,
Yeah.
there's this underlying belief in the possibility of redemption and change.
It's a testament to the filmmaker's skill that they don't shy away from the darkness, but also illuminate the path towards healing and growth.
Yeah,
Will's journey isn't easy, but we're always reminded that he has the power to choose a different path,
right.
to break free from the cycle of pain and create a better future for himself.
And that sense of agency is incredibly empowering, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It reminds us that we're not simply victims of our circumstances.
Yeah.
We have the ability to make choices,
Right.
to learn from our mistakes, and to shape our own destinies.
And that message of hope is woven into the very fabric of the film.
Right.
It's in Sean's unwavering belief in Will's potential,
Yeah.
in Skylar's willingness to see beyond his defenses,
Right.
and in the loyalty of his friends who never give up on him.
It's a reminder that even when we feel lost and broken,
Yeah.
there are people who care, who believe in us, and who can help us find our way back to the light.
And that's what makes Good Will Hunting such a timeless and enduring film.
Yeah.
It speaks to our deepest fears and our highest aspirations, reminding us that even in the face of adversity, even when we stumble and fall, there's always reason to hope, to keep searching, to keep believing in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow.
And that brings us back to the ending, which, as you mentioned, is open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Will chooses to leave Boston to pursue a relationship with Skylar, to step into the unknown.
Right.
It's a move that's filled with both hope and a tinge of sadness. Do you think he's truly ready to embrace a new life, to leave behind the pain of his past?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the film doesn't provide a definitive answer.
Right.
It leaves us with a sense of possibility, of uncertainty, but ultimately it suggests that Will is taking a chance on himself,
Right.
on his own happiness and growth.
It's like he's finally acknowledging that he deserves a life beyond the limitations he's placed on himself,
Absolutely.
that he's worthy of love and happiness.
And that's a powerful message, isn't it?
It is.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most important step is the one that takes us into the unknown,
Right.
that forces us to confront our fears and embrace the possibility of something more.
And that brings us back to the core of what makes Good Will Hunting such a remarkable film.
Yes.
Its ability to connect with us on a deeply personal level, to inspire us to reflect on our own journeys, and to remind us that we all have the potential for greatness.
It's a film that stays with you long after you've watched it,
Yeah.
prompting you to ask yourself, what am I holding myself back from?
Yeah.
What risks am I afraid to take?
Yeah.
And what would it look like to embrace my full potential and step into a life that's truly authentic and fulfilling?
Those are powerful questions. And I think they perfectly encapsulate the essence of what Good Will Hunting invites us to ponder.
Right.
It's a film that challenges us to examine our own lives, our own choices, and to consider the possibility of a future that's brighter and bolder than anything we might have imagined.
And it's a reminder that we all have a story to tell, a journey to undertake, and a unique contribution to make to the world.
You know, as we're having this conversation, I'm struck by how much depth there is to unpack in Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
We've covered themes of trauma, healing, friendship, social mobility, symbolism, and so much more.
Right.
It's incredible how much the filmmakers managed to weave into a single story.
It's a testament to their artistry, isn't it? Their ability to craft a narrative that's both entertaining and thought-provoking, that speaks to our heads and our hearts, and that leaves us with a lingering sense of wonder and possibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up this deep dive, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. The film's subtle but powerful social commentary.
Okay.
We've talked about how Will navigates the world of academia,
Right.
a world that often feels exclusionary and dismissive of those who don't fit the mold.
Yes.
But I think there's another layer to unpack here. The film's critique of toxic masculinity.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
The film subtly challenges the traditional notions of what it means to be a man,
Right.
particularly in a working-class environment like South Boston.
Yeah.
Will's tough guy persona, his reliance on aggression and emotional suppression, is presented not as strength, but as a defense mechanism,
Oh, interesting.
a way of masking his vulnerability and pain.
And Sean, in contrast, embodies a more emotionally intelligent and vulnerable form of masculinity.
Yes.
He's not afraid to express his feelings,
Right.
to connect with Will on a deeper level, and to challenge those ingrained societal expectations that limit men's emotional range.
And that's a really important message, especially for young men who are often bombarded with narrow and limiting definitions of what it means to be manly.
The film suggests that true strength lies not in suppressing your emotions, but in embracing them,
Right.
in being vulnerable, in seeking connection and support when you need it.
And that message is so vital, especially in a world where men are often discouraged from expressing their feelings, leading to a range of emotional and psychological issues.
Good Will Hunting offers a refreshing and much-needed alternative to those harmful stereotypes, showing that vulnerability and emotional intelligence are not weaknesses, but strengths, essential qualities for any healthy and fulfilling life.
It's a powerful message and one that resonates deeply with viewers of all genders.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the film's broader message of hope and possibility. It suggests that we're not bound by limiting social constructs, that we have the power to choose who we want to be, and that embracing our full emotional range can lead to a more authentic and fulfilling life.
And that's a message that I think we can all take to heart, regardless of our background or gender.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to move on to the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We've covered so much ground, explored the film's intricate layers and thought-provoking themes,
Right.
but there's one last element I want to touch on: the legacy of Good Will Hunting. It's wild to think this film came out over 25 years ago,
Right.
yet it still feels so relevant today.
It does.
I mean, people are still
Yeah.
discovering it, still debating its meaning.
Yeah.
What do you think keeps Good Will Hunting so alive in our cultural conversation?
I think it's the film's timeless themes.
Okay.
You know, those struggles with identity, the yearning for connection, the tension between where we come from and where we want to go.
Right.
Those are universal human experiences.
Yeah.
And Good Will Hunting captures them with such honesty and emotional depth
Yeah.
that it transcends any specific time or place.
It's like we're all a bit of will hunting, aren't we?
Yeah.
Maybe not mathematical geniuses,
Right.
but we've all got those defenses, those fears holding us back.
Exactly.
And we're all looking for that Sean figure,
Right.
that person who sees our potential even when we don't.
Exactly. And the film's impact goes beyond just the story itself.
Right.
Think about the careers it launched,
Yeah.
conversations it sparked about mental health,
Right.
and how it portrayed therapy in a way that felt real and relatable to a lot of people.
It definitely destigmatized therapy for a generation.
For sure.
Remember that line, "It's not your fault."
Oh, yeah.
Such a simple phrase,
Right.
but it became this cultural touchstone,
Yeah.
a reminder that we're not defined by our past traumas.
What's fascinating is how the film manages to be both deeply personal and incredibly universal.
Yeah.
It's about one young man's journey, yet it speaks to something fundamental about the human experience.
Yeah.
The search for meaning, the power of connection, the courage to be vulnerable.
And it doesn't hurt that the performances are just phenomenal.
Oh, they're amazing.
Matt Damon and Robin Williams,
So good.
they brought such raw emotion to those characters.
Yeah.
It's like you forget you're watching a movie. You're
Right.
just completely absorbed in their world.
And let's not forget the role of Boston itself.
Right.
The city becomes almost another character in the film,
Yeah.
reflecting the grit, the loyalty, the complexities that are woven into Will's identity.
You mentioned the ending being open to interpretation.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of its lasting impact.
Yeah.
We see Will driving off,
Yeah.
literally leaving his old life behind.
Right.
But we're left to imagine what happens next.
Exactly.
Does he make it work with Skylar?
Right.
Does he fulfill his potential?
It's like the film is saying, this is where Will's story ends, but yours is still being written. It's an invitation to reflect on our own choices, our own journeys, and to believe that transformation is always possible.
So for someone who's maybe seen Good Will Hunting years ago,
Right.
or even someone discovering it for the first time,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you'd want them to take away from this deep dive?
I'd say this. Don't just watch the movie, experience it.
Okay.
Pay attention to those subtle cues,
Will.
the visual metaphors, the layers of meaning in the dialogue,
Yeah.
and think about how those themes resonate with your own life.
Okay.
What are your defenses?
Mm.
Where are you holding yourself back?
Yeah.
And who are the Seans in your world?
Right.
Those people who believe in you even when you don't.
That's beautifully put. It's like Good Will Hunting isn't just entertainment. It's a call to action.
Yeah.
A reminder that we have the power to choose our own path.
Right.
To break free from those limitations and to create a life that's authentic and fulfilling.
And maybe it'll inspire you to pick up a pen, write a heartfelt letter, or simply reach out to someone you care about.
Yeah,
After all, connection is at the heart of this story.
so true.
And it's a reminder that we don't have to go through this journey alone.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've come full circle in our deep dive into Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, this has been great.
It's been a pleasure unpacking this film with you, and I hope our listeners feel like they've gained a new perspective on a story that continues to touch hearts and inspire minds. Thanks for joining us.